A small Wolds hilltop town in Lincolnshire holds 58 listed buildings, and almost nobody outside the county has heard its name. It's one of 12 towns we're counting down today, each with Roman walls, working windmills, or Georgian squares that never made it onto the map. The town at number 1 might be the loveliest on this entire list, and it's barely even a town anymore. Let's get into it. Number 12, Kirton in Lindsey. This market town sits half on top of the Lincoln Cliff and half down its side, looking out over the Trent Valley below, which gives it long views most Lincolnshire towns simply don't get. The economy here was built on farming for centuries, and the landscape still shows it in the fields running out towards Scunthorpe, 7 miles to the northwest. A working windmill from 1875 still catches that wind. It grinds alongside a bakery that uses the flour, right there on North Cliff Road. The town also holds the smallest listed building in the country, an old whipping post most visitors walk straight past without noticing on their way through the market square. Average house prices here sit around £252,000, according to Rightmove. Solid market town money for a place this quiet. The honest catch is that Kirton in Lindsey is so small it barely shows up in national data at all. It once had 4 working windmills. Now it keeps just 1, which tells you how much has already quietly gone. From a town this quiet, we move to one that was basically built on beer. Number 11, Wainfleet All Saints. This old port town sits on the coastal side of the county, 5 miles southwest of Skegness and 14 miles from Boston, and it built its whole identity around one business. Bateman's Brewery started here in 1874 and is still run by the same family, now into its 4th and 5th generation. 152 years and counting. The brewery sits inside an old Victorian windmill built around a Georgian house called Salem House and a former corn mill next door. So 3 different eras of buildings stack into one working site. Around 1,682 people live in Wainfleet, according to the last census, which makes it one of the smaller entries on this list. Average house prices land near £208,000. Now the honest part is that a town this size runs on the basics, so you get a brewery, a market square, and everyday services. But don't expect much beyond that on a weekday afternoon. That brewery is the whole story in Wainfleet. Long Sutton tells a different one, built around a church spire raised tall enough to be seen from miles out at sea. Number 10, Long Sutton. This Fenland market town sits under one of the widest skies in England, and its skyline is dominated by St Mary's Church, whose lead-covered timber spire has stood since the 13th century. That spire rises 149 feet into the air, and fishermen out on the Wash once used it as a landmark to find their way home. It stands over a gentle Georgian marketplace that has barely changed shape in 200 years. Population estimates for Long Sutton vary depending on where you draw the boundary, running anywhere from around 5,000 up towards 6,500 people, which makes it a proper working town rather than a village. Average house prices sit around £245,000, with detached homes running closer to £309,000 and terraced houses down near £166,000. The catch is the same one every fen town shares. The land is flat, the wind comes straight off the Wash with nothing to stop it. And that spire was built tall for a reason. From a spire built for sailors, we move to a rectory that shaped a religious movement most of Britain still follows in some form. Number 9, Epworth. This town on the Isle of Axholme is the birthplace of Methodism, and it earns that claim honestly. John and Charles Wesley grew up here in the old rectory, where their father Samuel served as rector for 40 years, from 1695 to 1735. The original timber rectory burned down, and the family rebuilt it in the Queen Anne style in 1709. the same building that still stands today. It now belongs to the World Methodist Council and runs as a museum, drawing Methodist visitors from across the world to a town most of Britain has never had a reason to name. Around 4,363 people live here, according to the 2021 census, giving Epworth a settled, steady feel rather than a shrinking one, unlike some of the smaller entries further up this list. Average house prices here land around £290,000, which makes Epworth the most expensive entry on this list so far. The catch is sitting right inside that number. Unknown doesn't always mean cheap, and a town this famous within its own religious community carries a price that reflects it. That price tag makes Epworth the priciest entry so far. Barton-upon-Humber flips the script entirely, with the biggest population by a wide margin. Number 8. Barton-upon-Humber. This riverside town sits directly beneath the Humber Bridge, and it holds one of the finest Anglo-Saxon churches left standing in England. St. Peter's Tower dates to around 970 AD, and a second grand medieval church stands close by, which is an unusual amount of serious history to pack into one small riverside town. The Rope Walk, a quarter-mile former rope factory, has been turned into galleries, studios, a theatre and a cafe, giving the town a working arts scene most places this size never get close to. A lot of visitors only ever see Barton from a car window on the way across the bridge, which means most of this never even registers. Here the numbers change completely. Around 11,900 people live in Barton, according to the 2021 census, which makes it nearly 3 times the size of the next largest town on this list. Average house prices sit around £200,000. Now the honest part needs saying plainly. Barton is the least hidden entry here. Bridge traffic already passes right through it, and at almost 12,000 people. This is a proper small town, rather than a secret anyone is keeping. Keep that population number in mind, because the town waiting at number 1 on this list is close to being its ex-opposite. If you've made it this far, thank you for sticking with us. We built this channel on real towns, real numbers, and the honest catch that every property show leaves out. If that sounds useful, hit like and subscribe before we get back into the list, because the smaller half is where things get properly interesting. Number 7. Spilsby. This Wolds town is built around a dignified Georgian marketplace, and at its centre stands a bronze statue of Sir John Franklin, the Arctic explorer who was born here in 1786. The statue went up in 1861, resting on a carved anchor, and it names him as the discoverer of the Northwest Passage, even though the expedition that made him famous also killed him. Franklin's ships became trapped in Arctic ice in 1847, and he never made it home. Around 3,677 people live in Spilsby today, based on the 2021 census. Average house prices run somewhere between £250,000 and £274,000, depending on which property site you check. Now the honest part is that beyond the statue and the market square, Spilsby is a quiet, unremarkable town for a casual visitor passing through, with no windmill and no ruined abbey pulling in coach parties. What you get instead is a solid, dignified Georgian town built almost entirely around the memory of one man who died looking for a shortcut that didn't exist. From a town shaped by one explorer's failure, we move to one shaped by water that never ran out. Number 6. Bourne sits right on the edge of the fens, and this market town grew up around natural springs whose water still has a reputation for being unusually pure. The red brick Jacobean Red Hall anchors the town centre. Its dark brickwork stands out against the flatter fenned farmland around it, and just beyond it sit 21 acres of wellhead gardens laid out around the springs themselves. local tradition also claims Bourne as the birthplace of Hereward the Wake, the Fen rebelle who resisted the Norman conquest from these marshes. Average house prices here run around £260,000, though the most recent 6-month figures from Property Tracker Get Agent put the average closer to £307,000, which suggests prices are climbing fast. The catch here is timing. A town this pleasant, this close to the fens, and this well served by its own water supply doesn't usually stay under the radar for long, and the recent price jump suggests Bourne may already be catching up with what it's actually worth. Bourne's prices are already climbing. Horncastles are doing the opposite, with barely any room left to fall. Number 5. Horncastle. This Wolds town sits cradled between two rivers, and it still carries fragments of Roman town walls, with the best remaining stretch built right into the local library. Horncastle has rebranded itself as Britain's best antiques town, and it earns the title with a dense run of antique shops, vintage dealers, and old bookshops packed into a compact centre that rewards a slow afternoon of browsing rather than a quick stop. The town's old horse fair, once said to be the largest in Britain, ran every August until it finally stopped in 1948, and the antiques trade moved in afterward to fill the gap it left behind. Average house prices land around £200,000, though that figure needs a caveat, because different property trackers disagree sharply here, with one showing prices falling by more than 13% over the past year alone. That kind of swing usually means a thin market, where only a handful of sales happen at any one time, so a single expensive or cheap sale can shift the whole average. The catch is exactly that thinness. It can work in a buyer's favour if you're patient and willing to wait for the right property at the right price, but it can just as easily work against you if you ever need to sell here in a hurry. From a market where the numbers wobble, we move to a town with two genuine showstoppers instead of just one. Number 4, Crowland. This fen town, home to around 4,900 people, holds two of the most striking sights on this entire list inside one small footprint. Crowland Abbey began as a hermit's cell between the years 719 and 860, was destroyed by Danish raiders, rebuilt in the 10th century, and then expanded into the grand perpendicular building whose ruins still stand today. Most of that work completed between 1392 and 1469. Parliamentary forces besieged the abbey in 1643 during the Civil War, and it has stood half ruined and half working church ever since. There is also Trinity Bridge, a 3-way medieval stone bridge from the 14th century. It once spanned the point where the River Welland met one of its own tributaries. Engineers rerouted both waterways in the 17th century, and the result is one of the strangest sights in the county: a working stone bridge built for boats and water, now standing high and dry over a road in the middle of town, crossing nothing at all. Average house prices here sit around £164,000, up about 25% over 5 years, which makes Crowland the cheapest entry on this entire list. The catch explains exactly why. This is genuine. Remote fen country, flat and exposed with very little shelter, and some visitors find that bridge to nothing genuinely eerie rather than charming once the novelty wears off. That bridge spans nothing at all. Climbing uphill out of the fens, Caistor kept its entire Georgian face intact. Number 3, Caistor. This hilltop town sits on the western rim of the Wolds, and it has kept its Georgian character almost completely whole, with 58 listed buildings packed around a set of interlocking market squares. Long before any of that brickwork went up, Caistor was a hill fort held by early Britons and then a Roman camp, and you can still see a section of that Roman wall standing beside the parish church today, now protected as a scheduled ancient monument. A local heritage centre keeps the story alive most of the year, open 6 days a week through the colder months and adding Sunday hours every spring and summer. From the top of the hill, the views stretch out over the flatter plain below, giving Caistor a genuine sense of height that most Lincolnshire towns simply can't offer. Around 3,095 people call Caistor home, according to the 2021 census. Average house prices sit near £198,000. Among the more affordable entries on this list, given everything the town actually offers. Now the honest part, and it's a small one this time. Caistor isn't a museum piece frozen for visitors. It's a genuinely working town, with independent shops and cafes doing daily business. And that means weekday deliveries and traffic squeezing through streets that were laid out for horses, centuries before anyone imagined a delivery van. Caistor kept its whole face intact. Alford holds the single biggest superlative on this whole countdown. Number 2. Alford sits at the foot of the Wolds, and this market town holds England's largest thatched manor house, built in 1611 and still standing at the heart of town alongside a 14th-century church. A short walk away, a working 5-sailed windmill still turns. It has ground flour on this site for generations, and the town arranges itself around 3 separate old marketplaces, which is a rare thing for a town this size to have kept. Around 3,830 people lived in Alford as of the 2021 estimate, and average house prices here sit near £171,000, which makes Alford one of the cheapest towns on this list for the sheer amount of heritage it offers. That price won't stay this low forever. East Lindsey District Council has already approved planning applications to extend the visitor offer at both the windmill and the manor house, including a new cafe, and the BBC reported the improvements as investment aimed at securing both buildings for the future. Now the honest part sits right inside that good news. The windmill is currently awaiting repairs before it can grind again at full strength, which means the exact thing that makes Alford special is temporarily not running at its best, even as the same investment that will eventually fix it becomes the clearest sign yet that this town won't stay this quiet for much longer. From a town about to get busier, we arrive at the one place on this list that genuinely can't get any busier, because it barely qualifies as a town at all anymore. Number 1. Folkingham. This might be the loveliest place on the entire list, and almost nobody outside Lincolnshire has ever set foot in it. The village sits on the old coaching road between Bourne and Sleaford, and its heart is a wide, sloping Georgian marketplace remodelled in the late 1700s by the Heathcote family after they bought the manor in 1788. At the top of that slope stands the grand old front of the former Greyhound coaching inn, still watching over a square built for a much busier century than this one. Above the square, on the site of a vanished castle, stands the strangest building in this whole countdown. It's a monumental stone gatehouse built in 1825 by the Stamford architect Brian Browning, who borrowed his style from grand European architects like Vanbrugh and San Michele. A house of correction had stood on that site since 1609, rebuilt in 1808 to serve the whole of Caistor, and Browning's gatehouse was meant to announce it to anyone approaching from the road. The prison closed in 1878. Its inner buildings were converted into 10 small homes, which stood until they were demolished in 1955. What survives today is that single grand gatehouse opening onto nothing but a moat and open grass, a monumental entrance with almost nothing left behind it to enter. Now for the honest part, and it doubles as the answer to the question this whole video opened with. Just 796 people lived in Folkingham at the last full count, which confirms what the numbers already suggest. This isn't really a town anymore. It's a large village wearing a town's old clothes, And that demotion is exactly why nobody redeveloped it, why no supermarket ever flattened that marketplace, and why the Georgian Square and the gatehouse to nowhere both survived completely intact. Folkingham stayed beautiful because it stopped being big enough to bother changing. For anyone chasing quiet over convenience, this is about as quiet as Lincolnshire gets without losing a single piece of the architecture that made it worth finding in the first place. So there it is. 12 Lincolnshire towns, and the loveliest one barely counts as a town at all anymore, just like we promised you at the start. Tell us in the comments which of these 12 you would actually pack a van for, and which one surprised you the most.